That's right, everybody. It is time for the sunset story. That's right. Sharing to a group. Boom. Boom. That's right, everybody. It is time for the sunset story. From Acapulco, Maine. Sí, amigos, from Acapulco. Time for the sunset story. Oh, Stevie. Good to see you there, Stevie. I want to see some imagery of your Mexican casa. Yeah. Good. Oh, Amanda. Yeah, I want to see some imagery of that Mexican casa. All right, everybody. Welcome to the sunset story. It's sunset story time. There you go. Boom. You get it? Not so good from this way, huh? It was better the other way. Yes, Acapulco. 100% Acapulco. You can, that's the island, that's the island. Where is it? There's the island, and then that's right there is just the other side of the bay. But it's sunset story time, my friends. And today's story is going to be the story, thank you, of how I met the most interesting man in the world from the Dosa Keys beer commercials. Okay. Oh, yes. Dosa Keys, most interesting man in the world. And there's Nova barking over there. Let's see if we can get better sunset, no? Okay. So you know how they always say when you go to a conference, if you just get one good idea from that conference, then it could be worth millions of dollars, right? And that's always like just a line, right? But it actually happened for me and Allie. See, I had this idea in my mind that I wanted to speak at Harvard, right? Like one of my mentors, he said, speaking at universities is a good way to get speaking experience and to raise your status in the eyes of customers and prospects. And I got it in my mind, I want to speak at Harvard, but I didn't know how to make that happen. I did not know how to make that happen. And the idea just percolated in my mind for about 3+ years. 3+ years. And then Allie and I went to the Dan Kennedy mid-year event in June, like when Dan Kennedy was really crushing it, right? Dan Kennedy would have his own conference in Cleveland, Ohio, at the Independence Crown Plaza in Independence, Ohio, outside of Cleveland. And you'd get like 200 people to show up and pay him $3,000 to $4,000 each for that 2-day event. It was like $3,000 for one person for 2 days, and then he'd add on a bonus day, which is another $1,000. So it would be like $4,000 for 3 days. And Allie and I, amazingly enough, because I've never even been a coaching client of Dan Kennedy's. I was just Dan Kennedy's info marketer of the year. That's all. I studied everything he did, and I entered the competition, and I won info marketer of the year. And because of that, I was offered the opportunity to be a sponsor of his event, which meant that not only did I get a table where I could sell or enroll people in what I was doing, but we also got to attend. And Allie and I go to this event, and I'm sitting there, and on one of the breaks, I said to her, you know what? God damn it. We got to do Harvard. We got to do it. I got to do Harvard. I don't know why why I haven't just made it happen. I got to do it. And that's a whole nother thing about how I got the place and recruited the people. But part of what I wanted to do with Harvard, I wanted to build credibility, because basically I was holding my own conference at the Harvard Faculty Club. And in order to add perceived credibility to that event, I wanted to get a celebrity to appear at the event just to make it seem like it was more real. Like, it wasn't enough that I had, because when I started out with this thing, I didn't have the Entrepreneurship Club of Harvard Business School sponsoring my event. I didn't have that yet. I just had the event at the Harvard Faculty Club. Then I went through this process and I got the Entrepreneurship Club of Harvard Business School to come along and be our sponsors. And I even had the president of that club speak at the first one. But I wanted a celebrity to make the whole thing seem more real. Now, I go to a lot of stuff. And at one of the seminars I went to way back in the beginning, like 2011, I met this man at the seminar. His name was Jeff Moore. And Jeff Moore was a super cool, smart salesman in the gourmet food industry. He runs a company called International Pacific Seafood or something like that. And because of my background in butter, him in seafood, selling to food service, we got along great. And he started inviting me to his once a month or bi-weekly masterminds at his offices in Southern California. And anytime I was in the neighborhood, I would go. And so I went to about, I don't know, he calls it the Thursday night boardroom. And I must have attended at least 10 of those things in person. Don't you think, Allie?
Well, more than that.
At least 10. And it was really a hassle to go to every single one, because when I was going, it was mostly when we were living in LA, and these things are way down in Brea, California, past Disneyland, like way past Disneyland. And they started at 7 p.m. So it's like me driving through downtown LA and through Orange County to get to this thing on the 5 freeway in terrible traffic. It was always a hassle, but I would go because it was good. And at one of these things, I met a guy named John. And John is a celebrity agent. He gets celebrities to do corporate appearances, right? So I call up John and I say, hey, John, I'm going to hire a celebrity to appear and tell his story and take photos with all of my attendees at my upcoming conference at the Harvard Faculty Club. It's back in December of 2015. And he goes, oh, Clint, I got the perfect guy for you. I'm like, who's that? He says, Jonathan Goldsmith. And I'm like, who's Jonathan Goldsmith? And he goes, he's the most interesting man in the world from the Dosa Keys. I'm like, huh. The most interesting man in the world from the Dosa Keys beer commercials. Now, at this point, were they still on the air, those commercials? They were still on the air.
We had hundreds of millions.
And at that point, he was the most world. But I didn't know that yet. And I go to Allie and I say to John, well, how much is it to get him? And he gives me the number. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. That was a lot of money. I'd never spent that much money on anything except a house, right? To hire this guy. And I say the number to Allie, and she's like, that's a lot of money. It was a lot of money. And we were like, oh, wow, let me think about that. And we think about it. And we look at him. And what do you know? He goes, I call him back the next day and I go, the most interesting man in the world, huh? X amount of money, huh? He goes, yep, he's amazing. You're going to love him. And I go, okay, what do we do? He goes, well, write me up an offer. So I come up with this deal memo, right? I like go online and I Google talent deal memo. And I look at some imagery online and I make up my own version of a talent deal memo. And I put together the offer and we sent it to him, okay? And I sent it to him and I remember he calls me back like 2 days later and he goes, okay, we're almost there. It was his number plus $8,500 more. That was the number. Man, oh man, oh man, were we nervous. But then I started doing research on the most interesting man in the world, and I find that he is the most memed person on the internet. You know, all those memes like I don't often do X, but when I do, blah 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 blah, and it's always the picture of the most interesting man in the world drinking a Dosa Keys beer. And I said to John, I remember as we're getting closer to the event, I said to John, he's going to look like the guy, right? He's like, oh yeah, don't worry. He's going to look like the guy. You're going to love him, Clint. He does like 10 or 12 of these a year and he's fantastic. Everybody loves him. All right. Now, in the first Harvard event I did was a one-day thing. It was a one-day thing. And I enrolled like 63 people who paid to come there and speak. And, you know, it was kind of like the low-hanging fruit because I basically said to all my best clients, I said, hey, look, I'm doing this event at the Harvard Faculty Club. I'm going to be speaking there. I'm putting together a whole audience of people who are also going to be speaking there. I got the most interesting man in the world from the Dosa Keys beer commercials. And then I lined up, I made a deal. And when I made this deal with the Entrepreneurship Club of Harvard Business School, I was pinching myself. I could not believe they agreed to it, but they agreed to sponsor my event and allowed us to use the name of the club with certain provisions, which I followed. And the whole event went amazing. It really did go amazing. And we had the president of the Entrepreneurship Club of Harvard Business School as one of the speakers there. It was an amazing day. And we get to the end of the day and everybody got to do their speech. And next thing I know, I see Allie standing in the back entranceway by one of the cameras with the most interesting man in the world from the Dosa Keys beer commercials. And you know what? He looked exactly like the most interesting man in the world from the Dosa Keys beer commercials. He looked just like himself. It was amazing. And he comes up on the stage. We have a standing ovation for him. He comes up on the stage and he was so freaking cool, Jonathan Goldsmith. And he starts telling the story of how he became the most interesting man in the world and how he was basically living in his car, going on auditions, and he wanted to stand out. And there were a couple of great lessons there. I'm going to share a couple of them right now. The first lesson was, he goes, you know, all of these guys looked a certain way and I looked different. And I wanted to make sure that I stood out and looked different in a certain way. And so I took off one of my socks and I wore 2 shoes but only 1 sock. That was one way that he stood out. And then he told us that he basically was doing his imitation of his good friend, Fernando Lamas. That's how he developed that character. He imitated his good buddy, Fernando Lamas, who he used to go fishing with. And at one point, I finally said to him, Jonathan, what's the most important thing you ever learned? And he looked at me and he gave me his very best, most interesting man in the world look. And he said, "Stay thirsty, my friend." And everybody laughed. Because it's funny that he's just using a line from a commercial. But as a metaphor for life, man, I really do believe you gotta stay thirsty. If you're not thirsty in life, what good is living? The people who are thirsty for knowledge, for experience, for new things, like me and Allie, we really do try to stay thirsty, and we really try to keep our open minds and try new things, and look for new opportunities, and do new things. It's not easy all the time, but we try our best. And that is one of the real sweetnesses of life, is to always stay thirsty. Well, that was December of 2015. And it was such a great event that we got invited to do another one. And we did another one with the most interesting man in the world again. And the funny thing was that the second time we did an event with the most interesting man in the world, this was so freaking funny. My good friend and client, another celebrity entrepreneur, Rondi Lambeth, was there. And Rondi Lambeth took it upon himself to go into the green room where the most interesting man in the world was waiting before coming out on the stage. And Rondi Lambeth proceeded to get that guy drunk. He told me he poured like half a bottle of vodka down that guy's throat. Man, oh man, oh man, you really got to be careful. You got to be careful not to let anybody get into the green room with your talent and get them drunk, because no bueno. Stay thirsty, but not for vodka. That's the moral of this story. All right, I hope you enjoyed this Sunset Story number 7. These 7 stories, I've been having a lot of fun with them, and I will be back again tomorrow night with Sunset Story numero 8, same time, same place, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And I also want to tell you that I'm going to be hosting a celebrity quarantine storytelling conference Wednesday and Thursday coming up this week. Wednesday, noon to 9 Mountain Time. Wednesday and Thursday, I'm hosting a free celebrity storytelling quarantine conference right here on Facebook. It'll be at the Celebrity Entrepreneurs Alumni Group. It'll be taking place inside there. So if you want to participate in that, just become a member of that group and you'll get to be part of the whole fun. All right. Until next time. Good night, everybody.